Hello ladies, welcome to Homemaking Radio and welcome to the Manse. I'm Lydia Ruth. I hope you get a few things done while you listen today, and I hope that you are managing fine in your current circumstances but have great plans for its improvement. It's a good thing to click the link in the description box and go to the blog where I have posted this video and watch the video there, because then you can scroll up and down and see what else is in there, the photos of the manse and the photos of books and the links that I have spoken of. And we have been through some very, very cold weather. We got snow again, and it's quite confining because I will not go out in it anymore, and I don't drive in it. I try to lessen the cortisol attack. And so, ladies, I hope that you are enduring things as best you can at home and that you have great plans for improvement. To begin with, I think it's a great idea to start your day by making a list, because if you get involved in something at home, maybe even something on your list, afterwards, even if, say, you're homeschooling and you've just finished teaching something, sometimes your brain has a hard time adjusting back into some other thing that you're doing. Even if you're cleaning the bathroom, sometimes it's hard afterwards to think what your focus is next. And so these lists really help to jar you back into place, and if you'll obey them, which I don't always. But let's pray first. You pray for yourself that you'll have the focus that's needed and the good judgment and the character and the determination to do your best and to have kindness along with it, kindness and love for your home and for your family, and balance in your mind. And I think, ladies, over time, this idea of dressing up for your home, I don't think anyone had to be told this, because it was something we did, and our clothes were easier to dress up. You know, we didn't walk around in our long underwear. We called it long underwear, long johns, and that's what they have today so much. We found it easier probably to dress properly because we knew what the outer clothing was, what the inner clothing was, and it was different back in the older days. But over time, even with good clothing, people somehow manage to shame us out of, I guess, the culture. Certain aspects of the culture manage to shame us out of dressing up for home. And that's one reason I still try to stay home as much as possible, so that I don't get any remarks about why are you all dressed up. In fact, I've heard ladies say they go out from their home to get a few groceries and they're just wearing some denim skirt and jacket, and somebody asks them where they're going or why they're all dressed up, which is, it's just gotten so casual. So, but it's fun to be home and to wear the clothes that you're not allowed to wear anymore in public, pretty things, and makes me so happy. And so today I also want to talk about how you can live a life at home and be happy and content. And I think that because we've been more isolated these last 2 weeks with our snow weather and very, very cold, I've remembered a few things that a few winters ago that happened. This room that I'm in right now is what I call the guest room. And one winter was particularly hard because all the passes were snowed over and driving was not permitted. They were just telling you not to go. And so we didn't have anyone here for quite a long time. It might have even been 9 months. But I decided to put myself on a schedule of classes and other things. Even I would get a box out that needed to be gone through, papers or other things, and made a list of all the things that I needed to do here. And this one room was pretty dismal. The reason that it looks anything like anything now is because I spent so much time in it with my exercise classes, and I'd turn on a video that I liked and I'd do some exercises. But while I was doing that, I was kind of looking around thinking, well, this is such a dismal place. And I planned in my mind about what I would do to make it appealing. And so sometimes these isolated times can really help us at home because we make the home a little bit better and more convenient. And we have to realize, ladies, that we've got to quit making everything good happen somewhere else or out there and start making it good in here. After all, what are all the boutiques and bed and breakfasts all about? People going from their home to somebody else's place that's more comfortable and classy. So that's what you do, is you make it the most classy place you can be. And I've noticed over the time that my descendants would rather come here than go rent a place. And I guess it's because it's so convenient. And I've got the tea kettle in every room. I've got the electric automatic shut-off kettles in every room, and they like that. They like the privacy of it. So ladies, do your best to look your best for your home, because that little start, that little beginning, your list and your having a cup of tea or whatever it is that you like, and your stretch exercises, and you're getting your bathing and getting dressed, gives you a start and gives you a chance to think a little bit before you head right into your work. And it is easy, as soon as you get out of bed, to put on your old shoes and walk into the kitchen in those old pajamas. And if you can get to the point where you're uncomfortable not being fully dressed, and you can't even unload the dishwasher unless you are fully dressed, then you've made some progress. But train yourself to get dressed first, even if it takes a while. And so I don't want to lecture you too much about that, because I think some of you are probably much smarter than I am. I told you last time about how we cared so much about that we would lay our clothing out or hang out the item that we were going to wear, and we laid our other things out, all our brush and our comb and our toothbrush and everything else, to make, and set out our cup. And now I think people have too much blending between the going to bed and getting up. It's just kind of all one big long day, I guess. It's hard to distinguish one part of the day from another when we don't dress any differently. So then we want to move on to also think about how your appearance affects your brain. And I know that many of you are younger, quite a bit younger than me, and you don't see any problem with it, because your day clothes are pretty much this. You can sleep in them; they're so comfortable. And but as time goes on, you might feel a little bit like there's something else, there's something better out there. And if you could give your home and yourself the dignity of dressing up, that little dwelling place that you're in is just sublime. And you're going to find that even if your children are grown and gone, that's the place they want to come back to. And many of you know there are people that would rather be in your house than in their fine, fancy house on the higher end of town. And it's because of how you keep it, and the love that you have for it, and the detail that you put into it. And so, ladies, I hope that you will care about that. And I'm trying to think of several examples in the Word of God of the home. And the home is mentioned several times. I even looked up the meaning of how God gave the midwives houses. Actually, that was homes and families that he gave them. I dug into it a little deeper. And why didn't he give them, something else, like a trip, or all the things that we moderns long for to do, write a famous novel or get an education? He gave them homes. And I'm just so thrilled to know that. And also, what was the widow rewarded for when Elijah who she had provided a place to stay, and he created these oil pots that were never empty. It was just a continuous flow of olive oil. And why didn't he give her, the things that we want, like a trip to the hairdresser or something like that? No, he gave her something for the home. He gave her that oil. And that was very important. That's important to me. I like olive oil, and I prepare food with it. And it's good for other things, too. But you look at all the references. Look at Mary and Martha, and Jesus loved their brother Lazarus, so he went to their home. Apparently, it was a common thing for him to do. And Martha was preparing a meal. And I thought that was interesting, that this was good, and it was emphasized, that she was preparing a meal. And we all know the story, that Christ wanted her to appreciate the spiritual part of life and not be too overly concerned with the physical part of homemaking. And of course we do want to put that first. But think of all the times a home was mentioned in the scriptures, and all the rewards that these people at home got. And think of yourself and the reward that you would like to have. We all just want contented, happy families, and no commotion that is uncomfortable. And we all want neat and tidy and clean homes that are convenient, that we can live in and be happy and not want to go somewhere else. I discovered that many years ago with Emily Barnes' books. She wrote several, The Spirit of Loveliness and Welcome Home and other books. And it was in the 80s, I believe, that I found those books. And the things that she said in there were focused on the home. You didn't have to go somewhere else to be happy. You didn't have to go out for a coffee. You learned how to provide all these things that you like out there. You provide for it in here. And somebody asked me the other day if I had come into any of these rooms to do anything, and I thought, sadly, no, I keep them clean for other people, but now I'm coming into this room here. There's a little table over there, and I do some letter writing, and enjoying it so much before everybody comes back. Now, I wanted to tell you a little bit about how important exercise is, and I did provide a link to someone who does stretches, and she doesn't have music. It's dressed fairly decently, and they're easier. I did find someone sent me a link to a Christian lady who was doing exercise videos, but her exercises were so difficult and probably not for people my age either. And but that will help. I can't even exercise unless I'm dressed and have my hair and face on. That helps elevate the mind. Just the little stretch. You remember when we were children and we used to do this, and we used to shake our shoulders and our knees, and that's part of the quote new exercise therapy. All the stuff little children used to do. Another thing children used to do is when you look at children or your babies, they have great fascination for their hands, and they'll do this, and they'll close them, and they'll open them, and they'll turn their arms around like this and stuff. Well, those are now being discovered as the best brain therapy and body exercise in the world. So get your children to lead you in their movements and their exercise. They're wonderful, and they're so important because they give you what's called the good endorphins, or feeling of well-being and focus. And it's also an answer to discouragement many times. It's just to stop and do something like that. Do some exercises or sing a song. Now I want to go on to the homemaking. Let me see if I have got everything here. So I want to go on to homemaking. And that means I'm not going to tell you how to clean things and how to cook things. You can find all that all over the place, and the web is certainly a great encyclopedia for us. And we also have to be prepared to know how to do things basically, so that if we don't have books and we don't have the web and we don't have communication with people, that we could figure it out. So you always need to know your basics. And so first thing I want to tell you is that at home you've got to not put yourself in a system of work that doesn't appeal to you. It can't be grueling, and it can't be unhappy. And many of us that grew up in the 50s, you know, the concept that people had of work in those days was just awful. You couldn't find anything enjoyable or about it that would make you want to do it. You just want to get it over with and get away. But with homemaking, the way that it is it's never ending. It's just to enjoy it. You can make an art. You could even make a musical for yourself out of changing the bedding or picking up the clutter and beautifying everything and standing back just the way I always imagine God did when he said after each creation day, it is good. And look at it that way. And then as you leave the room, you could take a picture for your mother or somebody else. And I exchange pictures every day with somebody because and also to make that list. And I'm telling you, this list is really good for the little boxes you put beside it, because you can check a box off even if the job does not seem appealing. If you add a bright spot to it, or you do something, or you have a great attitude and ask God's blessings on whatever you're working on, it just makes such a big difference. Also, those of you who like journals and can keep a diary, it's nice to write about it, because then you can look back and say, when was the last time I, changed this or did this, and you can have a record of it. Now, it takes courage and determination. I always say it takes the courage and determination of a well-trained soldier to take care of a home. A lot of people think this, why are you at home? There's nothing to do at home. That's wrong. And one of the beauties of homeschooling is you can teach your children that you are not wasting time at home, that there's plenty to do. And that even doing the laundry is contributing in a great way to the family. And sometimes children get the idea that their life is just about their education, and they don't realize that their education can be provided by the parents, but they have to contribute to it by clearing up the parents' time, doing laundry, doing dishes, doing other things to give their teachers the time to teach. And so we're all in this together. And so, ladies, some of you who didn't homeschool or weren't homeschooled and think you missed out on something, I'm going to have a lot of fun today, happily giving you a few lessons. And all you do for homeschooling is you find out what you need the most, what kind of knowledge you need the most, and you go and look it up. And that is just the very best thing. And I liked to make teachers out of my children, because while I was doing something else that they couldn't do, maybe I would be ironing, but they would come in and read to me whatever assignment or lesson or whatever they'd chosen to read for reading material, and I would ask them to now try to tell it to me without reading it to me, see if they could summarize it, and see if they could tell me what a good point in it was. And I mentioned how important reading comprehension is, and how comprehension is so important, because people nowadays don't understand figures of speech or similes or metaphors or anything like that. Let me give you an example of I believe these are similes, and what they are is they are words that are spelled differently but sound alike. And I thought of a couple of them the other day. And I bring this in to homemaking, because while you're working, if you're sweeping, if you are ironing, or I have my ironing board out all the time because I like to iron, I like to press, I like the clothes to look nice. And we usually just iron them as we need them rather than ironing them and putting them in the closet because they'll just smash up and get all wrinkled. But I was thinking as I was ironing one day, you'll be thinking alone with your thoughts a lot at home. And you've got to know how to direct your thinking into things that are good and positive. And it may take a while. But so 2 words that people might get messed up, and you can start collecting these words as you think of them, how alike they are with other words, and people get very, very confused because they aren't taught these things. Weighed and weighed. Okay, weighed is W-E-I-G-H-E-D. She weighed the apples on the scale. Weighed. W-A-D-E, wade in the water, like the song. Okay, and here's another one because I'm out on farmland that somebody just might not understand, especially out here, but maybe they do, is bale, B-A-L-E, like bale of hay, and bale is B-A-I-L, and that is paying something for your freedom. And there's so much of that goes through my head while I'm working. And if your child was just following you around, all you'd have to do is, and learning at your elbow, let's say you didn't have books, and I would say don't depend, it's nice to have homeschool curriculum, but don't depend on them to fully educate your child and then think you're through, because you have to teach them how to use it, wisdom, knowledge, understanding how to discern it, how to, what I was telling you about, we used to have these, how to comprehend, how to have reading comprehension, how to read the Word of God and comprehend it by what was written before that verse and what was written afterwards. And so there's so much that you can do at home. And I think just basically keep to reading, writing, and arithmetic, and give them those basic skills, and then you can find them things that they can read and they can write and they can compute. And I want to be sure that I have covered the home well enough. Like I said, it takes courage. It takes the courage of a well-trained soldier to keep the home going and also keep all the relationships you need to have on a stable level. And in dressing too casually, I think sometimes we handicap ourselves from doing a better than casual job of the home. And can you stand back and look at a room and say that you're happy with it and that you're pleased with the job that you did? And I'm not talking about, wanting a better decor or whatever, but just the general housekeeping of it. And so I was talking to a friend today that said that you're the keeper of the keys, and you can either live on scraps or always be abundant in your life at home. And that means just absolutely doing your best. If all you can do, ladies, is get dressed up, then just do that. And you will see, and like I said a couple weeks ago, it's always Dress for Your Home Week. And see how it goes, and then compare. And if you get lazy, you can see just what the mood of everyone is. If everyone seems to be a little not quite satisfied even after food has been prepared, because preparing food is more than just cooking a meal and handing someone something to eat. It's more than just eating. It's a whole social experience, and it's dining and has to be pleasant. And I'm sure many of you that are vital today in your later years remember times back in the 40s and 50s where people weren't so nice at meal times. They were always making it difficult. People would lose their appetite, and there were etiquette books that were going around that had to be written because of the talk at the table had to be corrected and tempered because it would spoil people's appetites. And in those days, everyone was too thin. If you can remember, if you can believe that, in those days, everyone was too thin. And so everyone knew that digestion was a very delicate thing, and appetite was a very delicate thing. And people wouldn't even lift a spoon or fork to their mouth if there was something unpleasant that was said. They just couldn't eat through it. Now I think they use it more as a solace, but in those days, the food you just totally lost your appetite. If somebody affected your mind that way, if someone was negative and critical, you would lose your appetite. Do you remember? And but now I don't know so much. Another thing to do, I think, is to get a feeling of sunny satisfaction from what you have done at home. I have a lot to do. This is the only clean corner I could find today. I have a lot to do because I've been dedicating myself to catching up on some paperwork, and that's always very tedious, isn't it? And if you are doing paperwork or this sort of thing where you have to concentrate on it, it's good to get up once in a while and walk through the house, rebalance your mind. And also, even though we've had very, very cold weather here, and I've had a hard time being warm. In fact, I don't think I was warm at all. But if there was a little bit of sunshine, I would just go step out on the deck. You know, I call my my front porch the deck, and just step out on there and just feel a little bit of sunshine. Just every little bit helps. So let us get into creativity. I think it's really important, especially to you homemakers who really do a lot of activity at home, to set aside a pleasant time, a time of the day when people are going to do something rewarding and pleasant. And it's good to have a reward afterwards, and you give it to yourself and you think of what you'd like to do. If you have children and you're homeschooling them, you can ask them, what kind of reward would you like after, within reason, you know, that we can do together at home, whether it's a special kind of music that you like to play, or or something that they would like to eat or cook, or whatever, you know, some kind of activity, game, recreation, something that they like to do, go for a walk, whatever. And set aside a part of the day that's absolutely without stress and that is pleasant. Now, why don't we anymore as homemakers sit and knit and take time to go leaf through our books, and why don't we absolutely deliberately put that on our list as important at time? And why don't we wash an article of clothing by hand? And why don't we, there's many things that I have asked myself why people don't do anymore, and the reason is convenience. We want everything done automatically and fast and without the process, many steps done to get it finished. And because we want to do something greater that will give us more cortisol and more anxiety. When those very things, the little scrapbooks that they had and the little paper things they like to make, when you look at, we used to go up in the attic of Mr. S.'s aunt, and up in her attic she had all the things that she used to do, and there was a big old scrapbook up there with little paper things to put in it, and we were just so fascinated with it, and wondered why she, you know, did all that. Well, they collected all those things to put in scrapbooks. They would clip, they called clippings, and they would clip sayings, or they'd clip pictures or things like that and put them in scrapbooks, because later on, when they needed to rest, they could sit down and go through it, and they still had the picture and they loved it. It's kind of like Pinterest, only I think I would like the scrapbook better. And so in doing away with these time-consuming creative activities that actually reduced the distress in our lives, especially even back in the 40s and 50s, ladies, there was always news. of war or threat or something like that, and or shortages or things like that. But women still had their little schedule, and they wouldn't abandon it and worry. And so I'm thinking back as to why we don't do that anymore. Stop and knit or crochet or do some kind of embroidery, because the world might shatter and we should be worrying. And so we need to not do that. We'll just do something fast, and then we can have more time to worry. So, but if you learn to be, if you learn the slow life, and there's a lot on YouTube you can find out about the slow life. It's very pleasant. You can have a deep well of happiness and a steady supply of creative contentment. And I found, for my family, for my children and me, and this is just my observation, ladies, don't do things just because I do it, but I turned the homemaking part, the housekeeping part, into works of art and joy, so that in itself was a vacation for me. It rejuvenated me. It renewed me. I turned everything that we had to do at home. I learned how to relax at home, and I told the children, this is our vacation day. This is our vacation. So what shall we do on our vacation? And we would imagine and sing and clean up and create a vacation day. And I've told you about our vacations here. And so you turn the work into something pleasant, and instead of a grueling job to be done. And so at home, there's where you have the freedom to innovate, to create, to invent, and to discover and explore. And instead of making home, make it a place of creative freedom instead of confined sentence, and make it creative. So even in small places, like the rooms at the manse here, some of them are quite tiny, but I don't get claustrophobic in them because I create the atmosphere of each one as though I were on a vacation in a special place. And every now and then I'll go through a stage where I will make these little signs, hang on the door, name the room or the place, and then I'll change my mind and name them something else. And but at the same time, I'm cleaning up. If I'm cleaning a room or I'm cleaning up something, and something always has to be done, then I'm thinking about something creative that can be done with this job, something that I'm going to do afterwards, something that I'm going to add. I get ideas while I work. So ladies, now the rest of the time here, I'm going to homeschool you. And so consider yourself privileged that I'm taking time to do that. But I first want to show you something that someone gave me. And this is one of those Hoffman Media publications, and it's called Entertain and Celebrate. And I really liked this one because it had usually they have a wedding in it, and I didn't care for the wedding one because the costumes are so bad now. And I remember back in the day when we would look at wedding dresses in catalogs and how nice they were, and they were just so old-fashioned and beautiful. But this one didn't have anything in it. It didn't have like a family gathering either. It didn't have any people in it. But what I wanted to talk to you about these Hoffman publications that's so nice is that, and their picture of, they have beautiful photographs in here. It's kind of like your scrapbook. Hoffman Media has just done it again, and that's what they do, is they put a picture on the back of and the paper is just wonderful. It's like old-fashioned parchment. It just feels so good. And on the back of all their magazines, Victoria, Tea Time, Entertain and Celebrate, they have a cottage one, they have many sister publications, but they always have a pretty back, so you could set this up on a little stand and put it in a room. It's just so pretty. Or lay it on the bed or the couch or something like that. And it's so cheerful to look at. And it doesn't have the words on it on the back. I'm always fascinated by how they do that. And then when you open up their magazines, from Victoria to whatever, their first picture gets your attention. And I think that's really important, that you learn how to. We are writing magazines back and forth to the descendants, and they send me a magazine, I send them. We just do it on pieces of paper, put the paper together, and we have contributing editors. And it's, we look at these and kind of get ideas from them. And another thing I wanted to tell you about was this book here, Jane Austen's Table. I had been reading this to you before, and I wanted to read from here. Goodness, I seem to have lost it. Mr. Elton's Ice. Now, I don't remember this in any of her books, Jane Austen, but they have a recipe here for something called Mr. Elton's Ice. And I want to read this to you, so maybe if you've got something you need to get done, you could do that while you listen here. It says here, it was Mrs. Elton's Ice. Remember, she was the minister's wife in Emma. In Emma, Mrs. Elton, the vicar's snobbish new wife, declares herself a little shocked when she first arrives at the provincial village of Highbury. Used to Bath and London ways, she is quick to pinpoint the ways in which village society falls short of fashionable urban norms, one of which is the astonishing fact of there being no ice at Highbury and card parties. I remember ice. Do you remember back in the day when you could get a block of ice? And I don't know where it all came from. They did have a way of freezing it. But these were ices, and we've done this before, where you can crush ice in your blender and you add some kind of fruit to it. So it says here, ice cream and water ices, as we have seen, were indeed the height of fashion in Georgian society, but depended, of course, on the availability of large quantities of ice for churning, something available only to the very rich who might maintain an ice house on their estate. This simple lemon and honey ice may well satisfy Mrs. Elton's taste for the high life until her next visit to Bath. So this takes lemons, water, honey, and a lemon balm sprig and lemon peel. And it shows here how to make it. You have to heat it, and then you pour it in a shallow dish and freeze until slightly frozen. And then you take a fork and you scrape it through the mixture, and then put it back. And then about every 20 minutes, you just scrape it through so that it is nice and fluffy. And then you put it back before serving. And then you can put it in individual bowls with a scoop. And this is from the book Jane Austen's Table. And every recipe is described as something coming from one of Jane Austen's books. And the children and I do that when we send each other the magazines. We have characters that we have invented and stories that go with them. And then they have their own recipes, and they have their own crafts, and we like to order things from each other. I've told you about that before. Now, this is a book about the Victorian home, and I'm not talking about all the art. She has a chapter in here on the Victorian architecture, but this is generally about their habits and their beliefs, and this is mostly about their religion of, she called it the religion of life, that everything they did was because of this deeply heartfelt religion of that they had an obligation to enjoy life, to improve life, to love the home, to preserve their families, to keep everybody decent and well-mannered. And this is part of their deeply heartfelt religion. And here's all, it's called Soul Food, this chapter here. So I'm going to read this to you a little bit. And if you were my students, I would have you read this book here, but chapter by chapter. Now, while it's really enjoyable to read things other people wrote, I've taught my children that it is more creative to write your own. We learn a lot from how things are put together, and books that capture our attention, we pay attention to how that was written, and we try to emulate that. And you can learn a lot from it, but everybody has their own story and their own style. And I always encourage people to just write their own things. Perhaps the most flagrant and certainly the most fragrant contrast between the Victorian home and our own is the frequency and quality of family meals. For evidence of this, we need to look no further than the shrinking modern dining room. Isn't that even back in the 70s, when we were buying our first home, when we looked around, we wanted a dining room. And the dining room was shrinking. There was no dining room. It was a kitchen with a little table in it, but no dining area. And I always thought that was just so glamorous to have a dining room. And everywhere we moved, I always chose a place that had a dining room. Was separate, from the kitchen. Now the farmhouse dining area would be a little bit different. One of the reasons that the farmhouse had the dining area in the kitchen was larger, but the dining area was near there so that you could reach and get the things out of the oven, the famous biscuits out of the oven, and they'd be hot to the table quite quickly. For evidence of this, we need to look no further than the shrinking modern dining room and its transformation into an office or walk-in closet. The architectural designer and critic Roger K. Lewis wrote in a column called "Let's Put Real Dining Rooms Back on the Table" that the contemporary family meal is often little more than grazing in the kitchen, a ritual of search and retrieval quite different from sitting around a dinner table. Eating has become an adjunct to doing other things, watching television, talking on the phone, reading newspapers, or sitting in front of a computer. Now, I remembered in this book previously, she'd had a photograph of a dining table, which had a big centerpiece in the middle, and which I think is quite handy because people can just mind their own business and not look at what you're doing over there, and you just talk to the person that's sitting next to you and have a little bit more privacy. If we're going to go back to the dining room, people need to learn to behave themselves at the table and not ask nosy questions, not criticize the food someone is eating or isn't eating, and not be critical at all, and not ruin people's appetite, not drive other people to tears over scolding at the dinner table, which was the custom back in the olden days. It's too bad. It does cause a lot of eating disorders. Lewis predicts that if this once crucial space continues to contract, like the portion slices of light foods, it will soon be extinct. But we have lost far more than square footage since the nightly ritual every evening from 6 to 7 o'clock. While Mother and Father were having their dinner, this dining room became a sacred scene as a high court or a shrine. The religious aura, now when they talk about religion, they're not talking about what a church. They're talking about this feeling, this deep spiritual feeling where you religiously follow a custom. The religious aura of dining in Victorian times extended to the symbolism of sideboards, and the reverenced meal was a daily affair instead of a special rite to be displayed. Just as civility was not reserved for guests. I want to stop and talk about that. Some people get the idea that they'll be real nice to everyone in public, and of course they have to, because you can get in trouble if you are rude in public. You can get a lot more trouble, and there are rules too in workplaces too. So, but some people think, oh, we're nice to people out there, but at home we can just lay back and we can complain and we can gripe and we can accuse people and frame them and become a judge and a jury and an executioner all in one, and accuse someone and make them feel they've done something terrible, or constantly after somebody. But what I say is it's the opposite. You're nice and kind and loving mostly to those at home, and then you don't have to change your behavior in public because you're the same all the time. It's bred in the home. It's bred into all of us to be kind and loving to everyone, to be compassionate, to be careful, to let others go first, not to be selfish or self-centered. You do that at home, and then it flows into the public. But we have a situation where nowadays everybody knows how to be nice and polite in public, but when they get home, they just let it all down and they start making life miserable at home for other people. And now that you are committed to Christ, you can't do that anymore. You have to change it around because it's a heart. It comes from the heart. So let's read a little bit more about the Victorians and their food. The everyday family table rated the same care and attention to detail demanded by lavish parties, which were a recipe for disaster without the right ingredients. Whatever the event, with or without servants, every meal deserved to be treated as a special event. Are you vital enough to remember that? That meals were, you got excited because it was almost time to eat, and you'd be all sitting at the table, and the food was good, and it was very nice if your mother prepared something, or if you were helping, if you prepared something that you liked. Even simple family dinners were treated with the same formality of meals prepared for company. Now that's what we need to get back to, ladies, is practice at home. Make home the practice area where you're fixing something nice for your family, because you're also feeding their soul and their love for the home and their loyalty. And you're presenting it in a nice way too. And don't wait for company to have it. I know the atmosphere changes when someone says, well, we're having company, and everybody just kind of jumps around and gets everything, puts something special on the table, use special plates. I say use that all the time. And that way you're not uncomfortable when you have company. Guests were always treated to the best service and food your budget would allow. The notion of potluck would have stunned the Victorians, who placed reflective butler's balls on sideboards so servants could see subtle signals from the master or mistress without interrupting them. Even families who couldn't afford their own Jeeves expected and received far more than leftover aesthetics at their daily meals. Every meal was served on the obligatory white tablecloth, and one of the reasons was nothing made so much noise. You know, the clanging of silverware and plates and drinkware wouldn't make so much noise if it was on a tablecloth. Both were respectable and equally respectful of domestic sensibilities. In this hallowed arena, it was the thought, not the cash, that counted. Leisurely family meals were so important that they merited the special place now often occupied by multimedia entertainment centers. The hours we spend with a remote control or a mouse, our ancestors devoted to dining together 2 to 4 times a day. Now, somewhere in here, which I couldn't find, it talked about the lady of the house would prepare some big cut of meat or a large portion of something, and then throughout the day they ate off of that, or they served it in many different ways, so that she wasn't always preparing things from the start. And this is the way many of us grew up if we had large families. We knew that often our breakfast was going to be similar to what we ate the night before, and we looked forward to it. Leisurely family meals were so important that they merited the special space now occupied by multimedia. Long before dietitians preached the importance of a good breakfast, job productivity and weight control, the Victorians realized how they broke their fast would make their day. So that would be in the morning. Because cookbooks of the era assumed their readers understood the crucial link between meals and school or work performance, they mentioned this link only in passing and focused instead on suggested menus. These usually included modest portions of fresh fruit, whole grain cereals like oatmeal, eggs, and bread items. Today, 6 in 10 children fix their own breakfast, if they get any, and it's more likely to run into high-sugar superhero cereals. And then she goes on to explain what was on the table. And she says, our ancestors used meals to nourish both body and spirit, right down to the elegant flowers that graced every proper table. Now, wouldn't that be nice? You have a little house and you're serving a meal. Maybe you have a small family, large family, I don't know. But make sure that everyone has a little vase of flowers on the table. And the children love to go and get the flowers from outside for the table. They realize that it's a centerpiece, that it's integral to where your focus is going to be when you're sitting around the table with others. They thought that it nourished the soul and also the sight. Even in winter, accomplished ladies of any means could force bulbs indoors and create attractive arrangements to complement meals. So then she goes on to talk about civilized dining. Dining is the privilege of civilization. So we eat, they dined. Dining is the privilege of civilization. The rank which a people occupy in the grand scale may be measured by their way of taking meals, as well as by their way of treating their women. The nation which knows how to dine has learnt the leading lesson of progress. It implies both the will and the skill to reduce to order and surround with idealisms and graces the more material conditions of the human existence, and wherever that will and skill exist, life cannot be wholly ignoble. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, but if you were my students, you would have to look up the words in here, and you would have to read each chapter, and there'd be a workbook to go with it so you can fill it out. And I'm going to finish up today by reminding you about Wives and Daughters, which is a DVD set you can get. I believe there are 4 episodes in it to watch it, and to start watching it so that you can understand what the book is saying. And they did follow the book pretty well in this one, which I believe is from, I don't know, I'm thinking it might be from 1995. A lot of the good ones were. And there hasn't been a remake since then. There is a very much older version of this. But the story is of a girl named Molly who enters into the book by Elizabeth Gaskell as a girl who is the daughter of a man in the farming community who is a doctor. And I guess he both looks after animals and people. And he has his own little office, I guess, in his house. And she is motherless because her mother died. But I suppose authors, they're so silly sometimes. They like to do away with a character that they can't deal with, and then they want to give the main character something that you can relate with or feel sorry for. And so I read the first chapter, the first paragraph to you. And if you were my students, I would have you read Wives and Daughters, but I'd have you watch the videos several times first and observe different aspects of them. And the first paragraph, some of my grandchildren took the challenge to rewrite it with them in the room. And I had read the first paragraph to you about the room and how it, the room, they start out with, and a lot of these old novels start out with the world, and they go to the continent you're living in, and they'll go to the town you're in, and then they'll describe the house and then the room that you're in. And so all of the ones that want to do the reading program, the Wives and Daughters reading program with me, sent me an email with their own description of themselves in this, just like this was a description of where Molly was. So I'm going to read the next paragraph here, and we'll look some words up. Now, if you were my children, I'd make you look up the words, but I'm going to look the words up for you today. On the drawers opposite to the little white dimity bed. Okay, what's a dimity bed? Let's see what that is. Dimity. Dimity. It is a hard-wearing sheer cotton fabric woven with raised stripes or checks. And there was a picture of it here. It has little raised things on it, like little embroidery on it. See there? That's called dimity. Or maybe I'm not pronouncing it right. And that gives, if you're going to make a play out of it, you know what that is. In which Molly Gibson lay was a primitive kind of bonnet stand on which was hung a bonnet, carefully covered over from any chance of dust, with a large cotton handkerchief of so heavy and serviceable a texture that if the thing underneath it had been a flimsy fabric of gauze and lace and flowers, it would have been altogether scomfished. Now let's look at what scomfished means. This comes from, it's British English, and apparently scomfish. Let's see what it is. It's from the Scottish dialect to stifle. And to suffocate or smother, to be suffocated or stifled. So let's read that sentence again, see if we can make more sense of it. That if the thing underneath it, to talk about the bonnet covered by this heavy piece of fabric, had been flimsy, it would have been altogether scomfished, stifled. But the bonnet was made of solid straw. And you'll see in the videos of her straw bonnet. In fact, I like to watch the first episode because I like the cotton dresses that Molly wears. I've even bought a little bit of fabric to see if I could make the dress in one of the first scenes of her. I guess she was reading a book or something, and talking to Betty, who was the household hired lady. Still, there was a little neat quilling inside. Now you can look that one up yourself, what quilling is. Every plait of which Molly knew, for had she not made it herself the evening before, with infinite pains. And there was not a little blue bow in this quilling, the very first bit of such finery Molly had ever had the prospect of wearing. And that reminds me, you know, these authors, the descriptions could get kind of tedious. But I do remember growing up how some little fine thing meant so much to us. I remember when the shoes, we got to choose our own shoes from the catalogs, and I chose a pair that had bows on them, and which wasn't very common for people. But because we had to wear very sensible shoes and very sturdy shoes, so to get a pair with a bow on them was very exciting, and I could describe it. I could describe it to you, but you probably have experienced it and you know what I mean. Now, I want to read one more piece of poem to you, and that is from a hymn. And it occurred to me how, like I said, we need courage and strength and determination to be a homemaker. It's not easy if you're going to actually do it with with a conscientious mind. And it is some little words from a song here. And it says, "The strife will not be long. This day the noise of battle, the next the victor's song." And that's really important, that when there's effort, it's not always going to be pleasant, but you're not going to get any victory until you have done the things that you need to do. So before I see you again, and maybe next time you could get dressed up and come to class, what I'm going to do with my young descendants, with that description of this room and some of Molly's things, is we're going to do some artwork to see if we can sketch it out and draw it. And it's very helpful to watch this movie to see what they did with it and how they interpreted it. I got this off of someone's, it was used, someone's eBay, but you should be able to get yourself some of these, and it's quite a treasure. At first, you may not understand it, so just watch the first one and then watch it again and read the first chapter here to see what's going on. Because in this story, Elizabeth Gaskell wanted all of her characters to end up good. She'd like to have a happy ending to every story. And Molly looks like she doesn't have very much promise at first. It seems like she's living a life of loss and things being taken away from her. But her steady faith is so impressive, and throughout the book too. And in the end, God sends her the best thing of all is her own marriage and family and home. So ladies, I hope this has been helpful to you. And I want to thank you for all you do for me and for your prayers for me to be here. And I feel privileged that you came. And thank you, all of you, for your brilliant comments, because I sometimes use them as ideas for content here. And I'm sure I missed a lot of things that I should have told you, but we will continue, and see you later, and stay close to Christ. Bye.